Welcome to another episode of Off the Rails Tech, the unscripted technology show. And today, the drunk technology show. So you guys need to let me know that if you like my drunk shows better than my non-drunk shows. Not that you have a lot to compare it to. I only have one other episode up right now. Anyway, we're going to continue today with our series that we started last time, which was a sysadmin series. We set up a 2016 Active Directory domain controller. So in this episode, we're going to start going over group policy. But first, I got to take a sip of my beer. Oh, yeah, that's good. All right. So group policy. This is what companies use to control, secure, lock down their computers, and it's really what makes Active Directory really powerful, and it's why people aren't using, most enterprises aren't using things like Open Directory or Open LDAP, whatever the heck it's called, the Linux variant. I think it's called Open LDAP. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so here we are in our server. We had set up last episode just a user, and we joined one computer to the domain. It was a virtual machine. But let's get into group policy. Let's start managing that computer with group policy. So when you open Group Policy Manager, well, I opened it earlier, but if you had never opened it before, you would get this. Nothing would be expanded. So you'd go into your forest, and then your domain, and then your domain. And then you would see that by default, you have a default domain policy here attached to the domain. So you see this little link here. That just means that this policy is attached here. But group policy objects are stored here. And here you can see the default domain policy. And there's no little shortcut here. That's because this is the actual copy of the default domain policy. This is just linking it to this object up here, the domain. And you can have a domain policy linked in multiple locations. So for example, if I wanted to link that here, I could. Excuse me, sorry, I probably shouldn't be drinking beer and doing a recording at the same time, but whatever. Alright, so there you see I have this is going to keep popping up, and it's going to keep popping up, and I'm going to just check this off so that it won't keep popping up. But basically, it's just warning you that you're clicking on a link and not the actual object itself. It's useful because it reminds you that you're not actually making a change on the, well, you know what, it's not that useful. Just click this and forget about ever having to look at that stupid message ever again. That's my take on it anyway. So you can see we have the default domain policy linked in multiple locations. It wouldn't make sense to do this because you have it linked here and then again here, and so it would get evaluated twice. The only time you would really link something more than once is if you were doing it like, well, here, let's just create a new policy. We'll call it test. And we'll delete this, and this is going to say, yes, you want to delete this link, and then it warns you that this is not going to delete the default, policy itself, which is good because if we defaulted the default domain policy would be kind of screwed. Okay, so we have test here, and say I wanted to apply this to IT users, and I also wanted to apply it to users. Well, now you can see that I have this one GPO, and it's applied to these two organizational units. Let's just undo that. Okay, speaking of default domain group policy, don't mess with the default domain policy. Don't go in there and edit it and start making all sorts of changes. There's only the only thing you should really ever be touching in the default domain policy is the password settings, and that's because that's really the only place that you can change your password settings, and it will actually work. If you tried to change the password settings in a new policy and link it to an OU, those settings will just get ignored. So please, please, please don't just be like, okay, let's start editing the policy and setting it up, and throw everything in the default domain policy. Make a new policy, at least one new policy. You're probably going to want to make multiple policies. Let's just rename this one. We'll call this like baseline security. Okay, and there's a couple different methods or ways that people go about this. Some people prefer having one monolithic GPO that just takes care of everything, and other people like to have lots of functional GPOs that are very specific and very explicit in their names of what they do. Me personally, I like having more on the functional side, although I don't want to go too crazy with going on the functional side, because as you get more and more GPOs, the more GPOs you have, the more time it's going to take to process them and analyze them, and that can cause performance issues. So I tried to have like one kind of large kind of security policy that encompasses a lot of shit, and then I'll have functional GPOs, maybe just a handful of them, for like user preferences. I have one that's like default user preferences, one that is WSUS preferences, stuff like that. So anyway, I'm not gonna obviously go over all of group policy because it's freaking huge, and there's like thousands of things you can edit and go nuts with. But I'm just gonna kind of show you some basics here right now. So let's go into this, and let's go into the. Let's talk about policies and preferences. Policies are, for the most part, and this is generally speaking, and there are exceptions, but policies are hard set, and the user has absolutely no ability to change whatever you set in policies. Preferences, for the most part, a user could get around what you set as a preference, but your preference is going to keep defaulting back to whatever you say to. So the user would change it, and then it would default back to what you set it to, and then they'd have to change it again, and they'd default back to what you set it to. So it would be really kind of annoying and kind of counterproductive for them to keep changing it. That's pretty much the differences for the most part. So we're going to go in here, and let's go to Control Panel, and let's go to Folder Options. And we're going to make a new folder option. And we're going to say that we don't want to hide the file extension of known file types. So when you're looking in Windows Explorer here, instead of just not showing the file extension if it knows the type, it was just going to show the file extension no matter what. So we're going to go ahead and add that. So let's take a look. So if you look at this document here, this just says new text document. Now if we go to view and click file name extensions, now all of a sudden we see .txt. It also says that over here. But maybe you want the users in your organization to see the file extension. Maybe it makes it a little clear for them. I don't know. I kind of like it. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and apply this policy just to show you how it works. So we set that in our baseline security policy, and we're going to apply this policy to the computer OU over here. So there we have it, and it's applied. We're going to close out of here, And I think we joined a computer to the domain last episode, but we did not. I think it's in, yeah, it's still in this container here. Oh, that's what these are called, by the way. They call these containers. I mentioned in my previous episode that these folders here that don't have that little icon on them technically aren't organizational units. They're called containers. Anyway, just a side note there. So we're going to take this client machine that we have and throw it into our organizational unit over here. So now this is linked here, and that group policy that we just created and linked to the computer OU will be applied to this machine. Theoretically. Hopefully. Well, let's go see. I'm going to boot up our client machine here. Probably should have done this before. But, well, another thing is that, well, we could just run GP update force, but group policies only get applied if it's a computer policy. It will get applied. Ooh, I think I made a kind of a mistake here. Yeah, I did. Sorry, guys. I'm teaching you bad shit. Because the policy I did... See, this is what happens when you go unscripted. But this is good because it helps me troubleshoot. It helps you learn how to troubleshoot. The policy I did was in user configuration. And we just applied this to a computer. Now we want to... So we don't want to do that. We want to apply this not to computer but to users. So it won't let me just move it, so let's just delete it from here, and we'll put it over here to the users. And our John Snow is in here, J now, because we screwed up his name and I didn't bother to fix it. I just want to take a quick look over here. Just take a quick look over here. Yeah, he's in this group policy. What was I going to say? Oh. I'm going to backtrack 1 second for a little bit. I want to go back to how I was talking about monolithic versus functional group policies. One thing that you should always do with your group policies, so in fact this name is not that great, it's just called baseline security. Really I should call it like baseline user security, and then I should have another one, baseline computer security. So we're going to go ahead and do that. One thing you should always do, if you right click on it and you go to nope, just kidding, that's the link. We have to go to the actual policy itself. But if you go to GPO status, you can see here it's enabled, but what you really want to set it to is say that the computer configure settings are disabled, because this group policy is just for users, and if it was a policy for computers, then we would do the opposite and disable the user configuration settings. That's because if you do this, it's going to completely ignore all the computer setting configuration. It's not even going to bother going through them. And as you can see, like the amount of things that are in a group policy, like it's just, so there's 2,306 in just the administrative templates. And then you have the window settings, the software settings, the preferences. So you're just basically saying ignore all this shit and just look at the user configuration. So that is a good practice to get into. Okay, so now I lost my train of thought. Okay, so now we're going to log in as JSnow, or JNow as I like to call him, over here, and we should see that, let's see if I can remember his password. Nope. There we go. We should see now that file extensions are displayed by default. So we don't really have any files, but if we do new rich tech document, you can see we now have RTF. So that policy got set because Windows 10 default is to hide these, but we set it in group policy to show them. We didn't make any changes over here, so we know the group policy is working. So that's kind of a basic overview of how group policies work. But you can get crazy. Like I said, there's thousands of different settings you can do. And I just can't even begin to touch base on them here in this video, which is hopefully going to only be about 20 minutes. So, one thing that you should do though is download the latest ADMX files that Microsoft has. So, administrative templates for Windows 10 Fall Creator Update. We're going to go ahead and download that. I'm going to show you how you actually apply those to your group policy so that they can actually be used, because unfortunately it's not that straightforward. What the hell is going on here? Yeah, I want to download this. Okay, well, that's awesome. We might be doing a little sidetrack. We might, what's the best way to do this? I wonder if I can do this on the fly. I doubt it. I probably have to reboot, which sucks. Storage. Shared folder, that's what I want. Auto mount. Folder path. Other. I'll just do a new folder here. I'll just call it shared. Select folder. Okay. And no, did not show up over here. I really don't want to reboot this. You know what we'll do real quick? I'll just make a file share. Why not? Shares. Netlogon sysvol. New share. Quick. Yes. Type of custom path. Share location. The whole C volume. Let's just make a new folder called shared. Select folder. Next. No, I don't want that. It's just, yeah, that's fine. And so you're getting a little peek at how to do a share here without that being something I planned on doing. Actually, I do want to go back to the security. Let's edit. We're going to add Jon Snow, and we'll give him full control. And we'll go back over here. Windows Server, it just does not want you to get out and go on the internet and download shit, which I think is the problem I'm having over here. Which is, honestly, it's a good thing. Like, it protects your server. You really shouldn't be, especially in the domain controller, going out and downloading shit. You probably want to download it on another machine. We're going to need that share, though. So let's go ahead and map a network drive. Oh, what the hell was the share? That's not what I wanted to do. Can I copy across? No. Okay. Fine, we'll do this the hard way. OTRDBC01 / shared. Reconnect, yeah, whatever, fine. Okay, so now we have the shared drive mapped. I had to do this convoluted thing. Sorry, this is probably going to add like 10 minutes to this video too. And we're looking for the administrative template. Go to Google first. ADMX Windows 10 fall creators. Let's just do ADMX Windows 10. There was 17. I thought it was 09. Oh, it is 09. Why is it suggesting 3? This is the newest one. There's 9. Yes. Download. Click here to download it manually. Sure. Is it downloading? Okay, save. Okay, sorry about that little detour. There's probably ways to get to work over here, but whatever. We did it this way. Cancel. I don't want to cancel. I don't want to close if it's still downloading. Let's pop open. Well, we already have 2 open. Let's go to downloads. This is still okay. This is done. We're gonna. Come on. All right. Copy it over to the share. And there we go. Finally. Jeez, little frickin' wheeze, guys. I do not really give a crap. Just me, that's fine. The hell did it put it? Program files? Probably should have watched. Probably should have looked at that path. I think it puts in program files, but then again, I did just choose just me. Windows, group policy, here it is. Okay, here we go. Policy definitions. This thing isn't done extracting, but we can go ahead and get started because we have to put this in what they call the central store. And it's basically just a folder on your primary domain controller. And what it does is, so you put it in the sysvol folder and a specific directory in the sysvol folder. And the sysvol folder basically is a shared folder that you wouldn't really map a drive to it, but your domain controllers use it for replication. That's pretty much what it is. And the sysvol folder is located in C Windows sysvol. So, excuse me. Here it is. Then you have to go sysvol again. And now you have to go to your domain. And then you have to go to policies. And there's no folder here called policy definitions, but that's where the central store lives. So we're just going to take this whole folder here and drag it over. And now we have policy definitions. And it's basically all this crap, these new things that Microsoft added to group policy will now be available to us. And one of them, and I should have showed you this beforehand, actually. Let's go see if we can do this. Let's pop this back over here. Let's go to, trying to think. Okay. So there should be a user policy. There should be a user policy that isn't there. Oh, this is not what we want. Edit. Should be a user policy. Start menu. Taskbar, and there should be one called remove the people bar from the taskbar, and that should not exist. Remove. These is sorted by remove, notifications, search, the volume, the security, the networking, the battery. I don't see anything called the people bar. Let's just look under remove, make sure it's just not remove people bar. Nope. So we don't have anything called remove the people bar from the taskbar. So we're going to go ahead and close this. Now let's copy this back over. And let's close that for posterity. And let's go into group policy again. Let's edit this. This was a user policies. Administrative templates. You can see it's kind of going slow. It's thinking it's loading, so it probably, hopefully, just loaded all those things we added. Now we're looking for remove the people bar from the taskbar. There it is. Okay, so there it goes. That just proved that what we did worked. This setting did not exist before. It's something that was added in the ADMX files that we just downloaded, and there it is. So there's proof that that worked. Moving on. What was I even doing before this? Okay, so we got the GPO. Yeah, so that's how you incorporate the latest and greatest policies from Microsoft. Now, if you're setting up a group policy and you're building one from scratch and you're feeling overwhelmed, which you probably would be, don't worry, that's understandable. There's actually, Microsoft has something called a security baseline. You can download it. Here's one. This is a Windows 10 or S2 security baseline. It has tons of settings that it has recommendations as the baseline. You can go through it. Obviously way too much for this video, but that would be a good starting point. There's also a tool called, what is it called? Let's download it. I was going to download it. I've actually never used this tool, but let's take a look at it. It's called Microsoft Security Compliance Manager, and it's probably not going to let me download this because I'm on the server, and it doesn't even show me what is this? I can't even have an option that it say download anyway. Alright, we'll do the same thing we did before and just download it over here. Google.com, and we want Microsoft Security Compliance Manager 4.0. Next, I think I said this already, but I'll say it again. I've never actually used this tool, so let's check it out together. Why not? See what the hell it does. So it's downloading over here. Once this changes to a real icon, we'll know it's done. Obviously the file size will have to jump up to. We'll copy it to our share. I'm going to close this since we don't need these. Yeah, what else? Was I going to go over anything else? I don't think I was going to go over anything else. I can't remember. This is Central Store. We applied a setting. We tested it over here. Alright, this is done. Alright, let's check this out, guys. Let's see what this is all about. Alright, I'll probably just skip ahead, guys, because I don't know how long this install is going to take. Yeah, looks like it's going to take a while. Yeah, it's going to take a while. I'll skip ahead. Okay, guys, so having some trouble installing the Security Compliance Manager. It requires SQL Express, but it's failing when it tries to install it. And this video is already long enough, so I think we're just going to end it here. There's just one last thing I did want to go over that I forgot to, and that is group policy process order, or just the order in which group policies are applied. Basically, the way GPO works is that the very last GPO to get applied wins. So basically it starts off at the local machine and looks at the group policy there, and then it goes to what's called the site. And I'm not going to really get into what sites are right now because this video is already way too long. And then after that it goes into the domain group policy, so it would be the default domain policy, and then it goes to the OU. So then it would go to OffTheRailsTech and look for any group policies here, and then if it was, you know, a user, then it would go to users, and it would keep going down the line however deep your OUs go until it found the last one, and that one wins. So if you have conflicting settings, so you have a setting up here in the default domain policy and then something in the user's policy that conflicts with the domain policy, the user's policy is going to win. And then, you know, if you have a setting that's not configured, then it just gets ignored. Otherwise, there would be really no point to the inheritance. So yeah, that's how that works. You can break that by, no, I didn't want to right click that. Oh yeah, you can block inheritance, which means that, you know, it's not gonna go up the chain and look for other group policy settings. You could also enforce. And you don't do that here, you would do that here. You could do enforced, and that means that this group policy here is enforced. That's a great explanation. So what? Let's see. So you can do block inheritance, and you can also enforce. Block inheritance basically blocks everything after it. Enforced means that, you know, I don't know. Enforced, I think, means means that this is policy is the only thing that gets applied. But how is that different than block inheritance? You know what? Just Google it, guys. I'm sure if you Google the difference between blocked inheritance and enforced, you'll find it real quick. Yeah, I don't recommend using either of those. I personally have never used either blocked inheritance or enforced, which is why I'm struggling to explain to you guys how it works, because I've never actually used it. But you can, there are ways to get around the inheritance if you really want to, although I don't recommend it. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Can't wait to make the next one. I think I'm going to do one on backing up of the domain controller and restoration. And then after that, I'm not sure. I might do... So I'll do a backup. Maybe we can get into WSUS or something like that. You guys can let me know in the comments if there's something special that you want me to do.